And in the Abhidhamma, they said that when the Buddha taught the Abhidhamma, 800 million devas became Arahant. If you don't notice this type of sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Tens, you won't realize that this is a contradiction. It's only when you understand this type of sutta where the Buddha says all Arahants enter Parinibbana here on the human plane as a human being, then you cannot accept how can 800 million devas become Arahant. Devas, as I said just now, actually is a holiday. They are so happy, so long life, they cannot see dukkha. They cannot see dukkha. So where is there any incentive to struggle hard? They are only willing to come and listen to some sutta. After that they go and play, enjoy. Some of them, because of past life, they want to do a bit of meditation. But they are not willing to renounce. They are not willing to struggle very hard. Even surprisingly, even the anagami doesn't struggle to become an arahant. He just wait for his time and enter parinibbana in the Suddhabhavasa abode. So you see, if devas can become arahant so easy, Buddha won't come to earth. Better go to and taught the devas. Can only be, yeah. No. They enter parinibbana. They don't. When they are alive, they never become arahant. The moment they enter, pass away, the Buddha gave a very good simile. The Buddha said, it's like a piece of metal. You heat it all day long because it's red hot. Then you hammer it, like some people. They shape this forging. When you hit the iron which is heated red hot, a piece flies off, This piece of red hot metal flies off, falls to the ground, and then it cools by itself until it becomes completely cool. There is the simile of an anagami. When an anagami is reborn in the Suddhavasa abodes, he's just waiting for his time, like the ripe fruit going to fall. You don't have to do any work. But some of them, they do some work. No, they are devas. Yeah, they don't become arahants. They enter parinibbana. They don't become arahants. No. Enter parinibbana. No. They just enter parinibbana. Arahant, you are talking about the state of a person who is alive. Kuan Yin. How this Kuan Yin came about. When our Buddhism was deteriorating in India, a lot of these other Indian gods became popular again. India also, they have a lot of gods, just like Chinese have a lot of gods. Yeah. Deities, yeah. What's the difference between what? Deities and what? Oh, I thought just now you wanted to know whether Kuan Yin was in Buddhism. So I explained that first. So when Buddhism was declining, a lot of people started to pray to the other Indian gods. So it seemed that a lot of Indian gods were brought into Buddhism and converted to bodhisattvas. They call them bodhisattvas. But we know that they come from the Indian gods because of a few reasons. One is, if you go into an Indian temple, you find an Indian god with about 16 hands. That's not. This same god is found, and now they call it Kuan Yin. Okay? And this, when Kuan Yin was in India, when they prayed to Kuan Yin, Mahayana Buddhism, they prayed to Kuan Yin, they call Kuan Yin Avalokitesvara. Avalokitesvara, this word, if we examine it, the last word is called Isvara. This word Isvara is in Sanskrit. In Pali, it's called Isara. And this word, if you check the Pali dictionaries or Sanskrit dictionaries, it means a god. So when they translate this word Avalokitesvara into English, it means a god who listens to the sound of the world. That's why in Chinese it's called Kuan Yin, Kuan Shun Yin, when the Sikane sounds. So this god is actually a man, a male. Because when this god, when they started Buddhism in China, they have evidence that the earliest statues of Kuan Yin was a male. These even appeared in books and all that, they photograph. The Kuan Yin, the earliest Kuan Yin got moustache, got beard, and all these things. And then, but Kuan Yin was supposed to be a symbol of compassion because it's supposed to hear the cries of the world, people suffering and all that. So it's supposed to be very compassionate. So people thought, how can a man with beard and all this be more compassionate than a woman? A woman must be more compassionate, soft heart and all these things. Change the figure became a woman. So you see how things... So when you ask the Chinese, who is Kuan Yin, then they look into the history. They found that there was one princess in China, very soft heart, very good and all that. Is it that one, Kuan Yin? Nowadays, you find a lot of people, when they go into a trance, they also say Kuan Yin Lei Jo. Everything also they use the word Kuan Yin. You see? But that was not found in original Buddhism. Because the original Buddha's teachings was for you to help yourself. Because Dhamma is very deep. You have to understand that this world is actually exists only in our mind. There is a sutta where one disciple of the Buddha, he came to ask the Buddha. He said, this world we know consists of the four elements, earth, water, fire, wind. So he asked the Buddha, where do the four elements cease to exist? These four elements. In other words, where does the world cease to exist? Where is there no being born, no aging, no dying? He thought if there's a place where there is no aging, dying and all that, he liked to go there, where there is no these four elements. He asked the Buddha. The Buddha said, you asked the question wrongly already. The Buddha said, you should not ask where do the four elements cease to exist. The Buddha said, you should ask in this way, where do the four elements have no footing to arise, no support to arise? Why the Buddha said like that? And then the Buddha answered. The Buddha said, where mind is luminous, where mind is boundless, where there is no long and short, no big and small, no name and form, no nama rupa, there's phenomena, no phenomena. When consciousness ceases, when consciousness stops to exist, there the four elements have no support to arise. What the Buddha is saying can also be found in another sutta. The Buddha said, the whole world can be found inside us. The start of the world, the ending of the world, the way to the ending of the world is all inside us. This is like in the Bible. In the Bible there's a statement which is very profound. In the Bible it says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. These kind of things, now you ask the Christians, they don't understand because Jesus didn't have time to explain properly. After 3 years he taught his Dhamma, people killed him. So he didn't have time to explain, but he knew certain profound things, and this was one of the profound things in the Dhamma, which we accept. From the Buddhist point of view, this kind of truth is correct. The kingdom of heaven is within you. To us, the kingdom of heaven is Nibbana. Nibbana, you cannot say whether something exists or something does not exist, or something both exists and does not exist, and neither exists nor not exist. You cannot say, because you only say, you can say something exists when you have a concept, when you believe there is a soul, that there is something permanent. When there is nothing permanent at all, then this question does not arise. Just like Buddha said, suppose now there is no flame, isn't it? No fire. Now I take a box of matches. I take the box in my left hand, I take a match in my right hand, I strike the match, I get a fire. Then I observe this fire burn, 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 burn. After some time, the wood burned up, the fire disappeared. Now suppose a person come and ask, where did the fire go? Just now I saw the fire, now where did the fire go? Did it went north? Then you say no. Did it go south? No. Did it go east? No. Did it go west? No. And this fellow said, I asked these 4 directions also, you said no. You don't know. Some people ask the Buddha this type of question. The Buddha said, not that I don't know. The Buddha said, you ask this type of question, means you don't understand. Originally, there is no flame. There is no flame at all in the beginning. Because of conditions, the conditions are right. You light the match, there is oxygen around, there is a wood to burn, then you have the fire. And then when the wood is burned up, you have no fire. The Buddha said, just like a fire is burning, because you have dry leaves, you have dry branches, and what's the other one? And you have, one other thing, 3 things is burning because of 3 things. And when the fire keeps burning until these things are burned up, and then it is extinguished. So the Buddha said, we continue in samsara because our fire is fed by 3 things. What are these 3 things? Greed, hatred, delusion. As long as we have greed, hatred and delusion, this is the fuel that keeps us turning in samsara. Never get out of samsara. When we cut off, we extinguish greed, hatred and delusion, then we don't go around anymore in samsara. And you cannot say when a person attains parinibbana, whether it exists or it does not exist and all these things. Because the Buddha said, basically, to start off with, there is no I, no soul. This word anatta, you have to understand this word anatta. Sometimes I was listening to one tape, one very old monk, he's residing in America. So, these Westerners, he went to Australia and gave a retreat, about 9 days retreat. So he gave every day he gave Dhamma talk. So he said anatta, I said no self. When he said no self, a lot of Westerners, they cannot accept, What do you mean no self? They ask him all types of questions. If there is no self, who is reborn? There is no self, who suffers? This word now we have to be very careful when we use words. Now we have to be very careful, Actually, there is one sutta in the 4 Nikayas where one external sect person came to ask to tell the Buddha, he came to see the Buddha. Then he said, I believe that there is no self. The Buddha said, that's strange. I never heard people say there is no self. The Buddha said, do you have intention or not? He said, yeah, I have intention. Then the Buddha said, then how can you say there is no self? So this type of sutta, what the Buddha is saying, there is a self but there is no soul. So when you write the self, it's a small s, small s, the conventional self. That self which everybody thinks exists. And this self is impermanent, it does not last forever. It is conditioned, depending on conditions it arises and cease. And it is dukkha, gives you suffering. But what the Buddha means by anatta is there is no soul. There is no, when you can also say there is no self, but there is no self with a capital S. That means there is no conceptualized self. This self that everybody clings to is only a concept within us, We only think it exists, But in the Buddha's teaching, it does not exist. So what the Buddha is trying to say is there is no soul, but there is a self that is impermanent. We still want to ask the second question? Forgot your question already. In the Mahayana books, they say that she was a former Buddha, and then she came back as a Bodhisattva to help living beings. Yeah. But the problem is, in Theravada, we don't accept it. It's just like, I don't know, so far I've been talking about heaven, I haven't mentioned hell. I want to tell you something about karma, what the Buddha wants us to believe. So, as I was telling some people upstairs just now, suppose there is a student, a boy, who's studying for his Form 5 exam. Form 5 exams, they have to take exam for 9 subjects, right? I think still 9 subjects, isn't it? 10. Okay, now suppose now a student he's going for the Form 5 exam, 10 subjects. So all of them hope to get 10 A's, isn't it? Okay? Now suppose you have the first student, you have a few types of students. I'm going to mention 4 types of students. The first student, he refused to study. And then he prays every day. You can pray to all types of deities and any being. But he refused to study. Can this boy get 10 A's? Not likely, isn't it? Now the second type of boy, he wants to get 10 A's and he studies very hard. But unfortunately, he is born not very intelligent. So even though he studied very hard, he won't be able to get 10 A's because he's not very intelligent. Maybe he get 1 or 2 A's. Okay? That's the second type of boy. The third type of boy, he understands the Buddha's teaching. So, and he's also born very intelligent. Then he studied very hard. In the end, he got 10 A's. Okay? Now he's very happy he got 10 A's and he understands how he got the 10 A's due to his being intelligent and because he put in a lot of effort and he got the 10 A's. Now the fourth type of boy, maybe he doesn't understand the Buddha's teaching. And then he prays a lot. But he's also born quite smart. And because of his very hard work, studying very hard, in the end he got 10 A's. But it's possible that this fourth boy, he might think because he prayed to Kuan Yin that he got 10 A's. You see? But actually it's due to his hard work. Yes or not? So, in the Buddha's teaching, a person can get 10 A's, a student can get 10 A's because of two conditions. First one, he must be born intelligent. Yes or not? Second one, he must put in a lot of hard work. Yes or not? Now these two things represent two things in the Buddha's teaching. It represents Kama Vipaka, in Ko. The first one, being born intelligent, is that the previous life in Ko help you. Previous life karma help you to have that luck of being born intelligent. But that is not enough. Working very hard, studying very hard, is present life in Ko. This life in Ko also must help you. Even if you are born intelligent, you refuse to study, you cannot get 10 A's. That's not. So because of these two things, previous life karma and this life karma, you can get what you want. In other words, as just now I was saying, the Buddha said in this world there are many types of people. And we get what we deserve according to our karma. Suppose in the previous life, a person, he didn't do killing. This life, he would have long life. Provided this life, he don't do killing again, then he will have long life. If a person, previous life, he was very generous, and this life he comes, he's also quite generous, he can become rich quite easily. But if his previous life very selfish, this life also selfish, he become very poor. And if a person say previous life he looked down on other people, always put down other people, think he's very great. And this life he come also, he continue this type of habit. He might be born into a very poor family, low family, people look down on him because he looked down on other people. Whereas another person who's very respectful to old people, respectful to monks and people he should be respectful to, teachers and all that. Next time he's born into a good family, respectable family where people were very respectable to him. If a person, previous life, he hurt a lot of other beings, torture animals, torture slave and all these things. Because he make their bodies painful, next time he come, he's born with a body which gives him a lot of pain, a very sickly body, always giving him sick, aches and pains and all kinds of pains. Whereas if a person, he does not beat other beings, does not torture other beings, he doesn't harm their bodies, next time he comes, he has a very healthy, strong body. All this is karma. If a person, previous life, very bad-tempered, little bit get angry, what they call, for wong or what? And he's born with an ugly face. Why? Because when you are very fierce, very hot-tempered, you become very fierce. You come out in the face. I tell you something quite interesting. Many years ago when I was working in the government service, I met one Malay prison officer. So we were chatting. You know what he told me? He said he works, I think, in Taiping jail, one of these jails where they sentence people to death. They hang people, So I thought this job was done by a prison officer. He said no. He said prison officers don't do this hanging. What happens when a person is to be hanged? They pay people to come and do, And he's paid quite well, maybe $100. Come and do this job, very simple. The prison officer on that day, he will open the cell, bring out that person to be hanged. Then lead him to a place where he has to stand. That this convicted person has to stand in a special place, which actually has a trap door. He's standing on the door, which can be opened. So he stands there. They blindfold him. They tie his hands behind his back, and they put the rope around the neck. And then this man who does the execution, he goes to one corner. He pulls a switch. When he pulls the switch, the trap door will open. When the trap door opens, this man will fall into the hole. This hole is not very deep. And then he will dangle there for a while. But because of the sudden jerk, the bone will snap. The bone will snap, so he will hang there for a few minutes before he dies. So this kind of job very easy only. And he gets about $100. But this person, after he goes back home, that night, tak boleh tidur. Cannot sleep, Second night, also cannot sleep. Third night, also cannot sleep. After 3 nights, he cannot sleep, or a lot of torture. So he got to drink stout or whatever. Then only he can sleep. So most people, after they do this job, you invite them to come back and do again, don't want $100 also don't want. But the prison officer, he told me, there is one man who has been doing the job for a long time, more than 10 years. But he said, this man, you look at his face, you dare not look at him again. So from there, you can imagine, because to kill a chicken already, some people dare not do it, yes or not? To kill a human being, you cannot simply reason and say, I didn't kill him, what? The judge sentenced him, what? But the judge only say, you are the fellow go and pull the... You see? So this person, because of to kill a person, you have to become very fierce to be able to do it. And then he keeps on doing, so the whole face also change. The Sotapanna has broken tree. You're right. What do you mean by first person? Sotapanna. Oh, the first one is Sotapanna, the second one is Sakadagami. Oh, you're talking about the, yeah, right. Okay. All right. The Buddha, many people came to ask him that such and such a person died, and whether he is an Arya and all that. So the Buddha mentioned that there are 4 things which, if you have, qualify you to be an Arya. 4 things. And these 4 things we can examine in ourselves. First one is you have unshakable faith in the Buddha. Second one, unshakable faith in the Dhamma. The third one, unshakable faith in the Sangha. And the fourth one is you keep your 5 precepts purely. So if you have these 4 conditions, then you can be quite happy with yourself. Give yourself a pat on the back. The Arya Sangha. Because you see certain monks, maybe they might get angry. Any more questions? In fact, a few years ago, I was in Singapore, and one person posed this question to me: do I consider Jesus Christ to be a holy person? And I thought about it for a short while. Then I said, yes, I consider him to be a holy person. But after that, I think he consulted another monk, and I think the monk must have given him a different answer. Now, my basis for saying that somebody like Jesus Christ can be considered a holy person, because in the Samanya Pala Sutta, which is the second sutta in the Digha Nikaya, the Buddha was asked, what are the fruits of cultivating the spiritual path? What are the fruits of cultivating the spiritual path? Then first the Buddha talked about the worldly advantages of cultivating a spiritual path. The king asked him the question, worldly advantages, for example, suppose a slave, there's a slave of the king. Because he's a slave of the king can order him to do whatever he likes, and he's got to serve the king, and he probably have to smile also in serving the king and all that. But suppose he renounced and became a monk, then the Buddha asked, then how would you treat this slave now? Would you call him back after he's become a monk? Ask him to come and do this, go and do that? King said, no. After he has become a monk, he's worn the robes, I will pay due respect to him. I bow down to him, pay respect to him, even though formerly he was his slave. And the Buddha and the king said he will support him. So the Buddha said, there, you see, that's already obvious fruit of the holy life that you can see. But the Buddha, after that, the Buddha went to talk about what he called Uttara Manusa Dhamma, superhuman attainments, superhuman fruits of the way. And the first one he mentioned was the first jhana, the second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. If you look at the Nikayas, the Buddha is always talking about jhanas. And I explained just now why our Buddhist jhanas are different from external sect jhanas, because the Buddhist jhanas are always supported by the 7 factors of the Aryan Eightfold Path. Otherwise, they are not samadhi. So, In the Buddha's point of view, the jhanas are supernormal attainments, From there only the Buddha mentioned about the paths and the fruitions. So it is any person who has actually attained the jhanas in that respect, up to that level, he is considered holy. Why? Because he's not like a normal person. There's many people have this wrong belief that a person attained jhana, not much use. Because after he comes out of jhana, all the hindrances come back. People who can say like that, that shows they have never investigated the four Nikayas properly. Because if you investigate the four Nikayas properly, you find there's a sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya where the Buddha said, Aryan disciples, the sekas, what are sometimes translated as the learners, he said these have abandoned the hindrances. Abandoned already, even out of jhana, abandoned already. Whereas the aseka, the arahant, has not only abandoned the hindrances, they have been rooted out. The roots also pulled out. The hindrances obstruct us, like lalang. Lalang grown too long, you try to walk, it obstructs you. But in a person who has attained the four jhanas, they are cut down, all the lalang is cut down, but not rooted out, so that you can see clearly already. So for a person who has attained the jhanas, he sees things more clearly than other people. And as I said just now, in respect of a Buddhist, a person who follows the Aryan Eightfold Path, if by the time he attains jhanas, he has already attained the other 7 factors, so that he sees things very different from ordinary person already. And because he doesn't have these defilements to envelop him, do not obstruct him, then he doesn't have this sensual desire, this ill will, and all these things, restlessness and worry, sloth and torpor and doubt. And this fact that a person who has attained jhanas has abandoned the 5 hindrances are also to be found in several other suttas. For example, there's one sutta where the Buddha was talking to many of the monks, and he noticed a lot of new monks who came from the Anuruddha sect, Anuruddha clan. Then he talked to them. He said, Anuruddhas, he said, if a person does not attain piti and sukha, sometimes translated as delightful sensation and happiness, then he will continue to be obsessed by he's obsessed by the 5 hindrances. The 5 hindrances obsess him. But when he attains to piti and sukha or something higher than that, that means either the arupa jhanas or the arupa jhanas, then the Buddha said the hindrances do not continue to obsess him anymore. And then there are other suttas, like for example, I think his cousin, a very prominent Sakyan by the name of Mahanama, came to see the Buddha. He said, Bhagava, he said, although I understand Dhamma, I know Dhamma, and I know that certain things are wrong, like sensual desire and all that, yet, even though I know Dhamma and I understand things are wrong, still I cannot do, like sensual desires still like obstruct me, still lead me astray. Then he said, why is that? Why is that? I understand Dhamma, yet still I do wrong things because of sensual desire. Then the Buddha said, it's true, Mahanama. I said, It's because you have not attained to piti and sukha or something higher than that. That is why sensual desire still obsess you. That shows what the Buddha is trying to say. You have not attained to jhana. That's why these 5 hindrances are all the time enveloping you. Only when you have attained to jhana that these 5 hindrances are abandoned. And there's another sutta where one person came to talk to the Buddha. He said, Bhagavan, I said, there's a lot of teachers who come to this place. One person says got karma, one teacher says got karma, another teacher says even if you were to go around with a knife and you will kill countless of human beings with your knife, slashing them, yet you create no karma. Then there are some teachers who say after you pass away from here, you die, nothing exists at all. There's some teachers that say after you pass away from here, you will continue to exist forever. He said he hear all these things, he's confused. He is in doubt. Who is true? Who is talking the truth? Who is true? Who is false? Then the Buddha told him, he said, you are doubtful. That's correct. That's natural to be doubtful because all these things are doubtful. But the Buddha said, you will have no more doubt if you can get mental calm. If you can attain to mental calm, then you will not have doubt. What the Buddha is trying to say, you can understand. If you see other sutta, there is one sutta where the Buddha says, a person attains right view from hearing another voice and thorough consideration. He considers properly, then he gets right view. Another person gets wrong view because of hearing another person's voice and unthorough consideration. Unthorough consideration and thorough consideration, what do these things mean? Thorough consideration means you are able to consider something. Suppose you want to arrive at a solution, it needs 10 steps. Your mind is strong enough to contemplate all the 10 steps to be able to see things clearly. Whereas another person whose mind is weak, does not have samadhi, is enveloped by the 5 hindrances, he consider these 10 things, after he consider about 3 steps or 4 steps, his mind is sidetracked, stray thoughts come. He cannot have thorough consideration. So his consideration is unthorough. Because of that, he cannot see things clearly. Because he cannot see things clearly, he gets wrong view. So what our Buddha was trying to tell this man, that when you attain mental calm, you will not have doubt, is when you attain mental calm, you will be able to see things very clearly. Then you will understand and then you won't have doubt. That's what the Buddha is trying to say. As I mentioned just now, the condition for seeing things clearly as they really are, yata bhuta jnana dasana, is mentioned in the sutta as samadhi. Only one condition. Unless you attain to samadhi, even you try to see, you cannot see things clearly because you are enveloped by the 5 hindrances. It's just like wearing dark glasses, and you try to see a color. However hard you stare, you can never see the real color because you are wearing dark glasses. Only when you take away the dark glasses, then you can see the color properly. Any other question? Don't be shy to ask. You can ask about Christianity also if you want. Actually, if you all don't have a question, just now I mentioned about the Christians. They were saying, the Christians, just now I said in the Bible, it is stated that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Now, as I reflect, I think what the old prophets long time ago, those prophets who spoke these words, they have quite a good understanding of the Dhamma. The kingdom of heaven is the mind. And for example, in the Bible, they talk about Adam and Eve. How Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, and they were expelled from heaven. But the thing is, what is the forbidden fruit? In the Bible, it specifically mentioned the forbidden fruit was the fruit of knowledge, fruit of knowledge. So, as just now I mentioned about the state of Nibbana, the state of Nibbana is the state where the consciousness ceases to be active. The mind is still there. We say something like potential energy. It is the mind is still there, but it ceases to be active. Ceases to be active. In other words, it does not manifest things for you to see, to hear, and all these things. So, a being, if his consciousness starts to work, the moment the consciousness starts to work, that is knowledge. That is knowledge, And when you have knowledge, you can see the world, you can hear the sounds, you can smell and all these things. And because you see the world and this being will have a body, then it begins to see other beings. It begins to differentiate, other beings, and this is I, this is me, that is them. So once you have the I and the them, then the ego sets in, When you see something, instead of just thinking that it's just seeing, he thinks, I see, I hear. This I is something we added on. Because of that, it's like we are no more in that Nibbana state. We have been expelled from heaven. So to go back to heaven, we have to cultivate the Aryan Eightfold Path. This concept of God, some people say that in Buddhism we don't have God, but it depends on what you mean by God. This translation actually is can be very misleading one. For example, this word sati. You have to understand what the word sati means. People sometimes translate it as mindfulness. But if you look into the sutta, actually the word sati is explained in a few words. There's about 4 or 5 suttas that define sati in the same way, and they define sati as being able to remember what you said and you did a long time ago. It means you are able to recollect. So when you translate it as the word mindfulness, if by mindfulness you mean being able to remember, then you are correct. But if you think mindfulness is being mindful of the seeing, hearing and smelling and all these things, you can be quite misled, Because there is a sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya where the Buddha mentioned that we should keep to our own pasture, keep to our own field, don't stray out. When you stray out, you get caught by Mara. And what is your own pasture? The Buddha said, you have to contemplate on the 4 things, the body, the feelings, the mind, the state of the mind, and the Dhamma. And the Buddha mentioned specifically, don't be led by thoughts of the body, don't be led astray by thoughts of the feelings and all that. Don't think, just contemplate these 4 things, even contemplate the mind without thinking. And the Buddha said, Mara's field, Mara's ground is the 6 sense doors, the 6 sense objects, seeing, hearing and all that. You go and start contemplating the outside things, the seeing and the hearing and all that, that is not meditation. That is straying into Mara's field already, and you can very easily get caught. So when you translate the word mindfulness, when you use sati and you translate mindfulness, you can use it, but you have to keep in mind, it means mindfulness on only 4 things. Only these 4 things. And as I mentioned just now, when you cultivate the Aryan Eightfold Path, there are many suttas, not many, there are 2 or 3 suttas that say definitely, if you cultivate sati correctly, it must lead you to samadhi. It must lead you into the jhana. This mindfulness and concentration, they help each other. You cannot separate one. You cultivate mindfulness, you will get concentration. And if you have concentration, it helps you to be mindful. You cannot run away. These two are interlinked. In fact, there is a few suttas that talk about satipatthana and explain what you mean by satipatthana. Satipatthana actually means an intense state of sati. Patthana comes from 2 words, pa and thana. Pa means extreme, intense. Thana means a state, So, satipatthana is an intense state of sati. It's not ordinary sati. And this you can confirm by a few suttas. For example, in Majjhima Nikaya, I think 125 and 117, the Buddha said, if you cultivate satipatthana, Majjhima Nikaya number 44, the Buddha said what? The Buddha said the characteristic mark of samadhi is satipatthana. That means if you have jhanas, you must have satipatthana. In fact, there is another sutta in Samyutta Nikaya which says how to practice satipatthana. You practice satipatthana, you must get one-pointedness of mind. So the characteristic mark of jhana, the 4 jhanas, is satipatthana. You must be automatically have satipatthana when you have the 4 jhanas. This is confirmed by other suttas. For example, the Buddha says his disciples, the Aryan disciples, the learner and the Arahant, they constantly abide in satipatthana. All the time they abide in satipatthana. And then there's another sutta where the Buddha says, when you practice to attain satipatthana, you must put the effort to attain satipatthana. But once you have attained satipatthana, the Buddha says, abandon it. You abandon the practice of satipatthana when you have attained it. What does it mean? It means that when you have attained satipatthana, it becomes automatic. So unless you attain the 4 jhanas, you don't have satipatthana. You are only trying to be mindful. You are still not automatically mindful. Only when a person attains the 4 jhanas, then the Buddha said in Majjhima 44 that the characteristic mark of the 4 jhanas is the satipatthana. That means that's why the Buddha said after you attain satipatthana, abandon the practice. But even though you abandon the practice, the Buddha said the Sekha, the learners and the Arahant constantly abide in satipatthana. Even though they abandon, they still abide in satipatthana because they don't need to make any effort already. Once they have attained the jhanas, it becomes automatic. Now this kind of suttas, you don't go and investigate, you don't understand what you mean by satipatthana. Why is it nowadays people treat sati and satipatthana the same? It's not the same. Sati and satipatthana is a difference. You cultivate sati, you must get samadhi. And when you have samadhi, you have automatic satipatthana. Yeah. That's why I say it's a big mistake to separate samatha and vipassana. These 2 terms, samatha and vipassana, are found in the 7 bojjhanga. The equivalent 2 terms there are samadhi and Dhamma Vichaya, contemplation, investigation of Dhamma. So in the 7 Bhujangas, you are supposed to cultivate 7. How can you take away 1 or 2? You cannot simply choose to take away 1 or 2. They all come together. Because unfortunately, they believe it to be the real teachings. As I say, many of them, they sincerely believe this because they have been taught from young. And they have no reason to question it, because in their country nobody questions it. Is it, for example, somebody has been brought up as a Christian, and all the time he is happy being a Christian. You tell him no God, he must slap you in the face. No. Very hard to convince people. That's why you try to be helpful to people, you get persecuted. People badmouth you, talk bad about you and all these things. These people, they make a big mistake. What is that big mistake? They always tell people, practice Satipatthana and study the Satipatthana Sutta, memorize the Satipatthana Sutta, and practice according to the Satipatthana Sutta. You cannot understand Satipatthana by looking at one sutta, because one sutta will tell you the truth from one angle. Another sutta will tell you the truth from another angle. Another sutta will tell you the truth from another angle. Only when you study so many suttas and you can see it from so many angles that you can relate, then only you understand. Otherwise, why are there such suttas where the Buddha said, after you attain Satipatthana, abandon the practice? What does it mean? If you just study the Satipatthana Sutta, you're not going to understand this. Yes or not? There are other things, for example, liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom. And then there is one sutta, Kitagiri Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number 70, where the Buddha said, a person is 2 ways liberated. A person who is 2 ways liberated, he attains the arupa jhanas. Whereas the person who is liberated by wisdom, he does not attain the arupa jhanas. And then they use this liberation by wisdom, this is in the commentaries. They say that a person who is liberated by wisdom, there are 5 types. One who has attained the 4 jhanas, one who has attained 3 jhanas, one has attained 2, 1, and one who has attained no jhanas. And they talk about the Sukha Vipassaka Arahan, the dry vision Arahan, which has no basis at all in the sutta. As I mentioned just now, there is 2 suttas which say that the Anagami has got perfect sila and samadhi, and the Arahan has got perfect sila, samadhi and panya, all Arahants. So they must have perfect samadhi. So this thing about the dry vision Arahan, there is no basis for it. And when you understand the Satipatthana, the meaning of Satipatthana, that Satipatthana becomes automatic only after you attain the jhanas, and that if you practice the Satipatthana correctly, you must attain the jhanas, then there is no reason to split samatha and vipassana. Just like a person who doesn't understand the 4 nikayas about the Aryan path, they will start differentiating between bodhisattva path and the arahant path, when in fact the 2 come together. So that's the trouble we have nowadays. Actually, the Buddha mentioned in one of the suttas that lay people, you should study the suttas. And if you look at the suttas, you find that all the people who attain the Sotapanna, first fruition, they did it by hearing Dhamma. Yes or not? Just hear Dhamma only, they attain Sotapanna. And just now I mentioned Sotapanna and Sakadagami, you don't need perfect Samadhi, you only need perfect Sila. So, the first step is to understand our Buddha's words in the 4 Nikayas, understand them well. There are some people, they have the wrong view that the Sotapanna is attained only by meditation. It's completely not founded in the Nikayas. In the Nikayas, it's always by hearing the Dhamma. So, there are some people, they start off straight away, they want to meditate, without a proper understanding of the Dhamma. And there are people who have been meditating for 20 over years, I'm told, 20 over years, and teaching meditation. In the end, they renounce. But they don't renounce to become a monk or a nun, they renounce Buddhism. A fan of 20 over years and change their religion. It's very shameful. It shows there is something wrong somewhere, isn't it? But I speak all this with good intention, so I'm not here to attack people or to put down anybody. My intention is to help people to understand the right Dhamma so that they don't waste years of groping along the wrong road, and then after many years you realize, wow, now Devas are compassionate. And now just before the talk also the light came back. So, as I was saying just now, I'm trying to help people not to waste their time, to set them on the right path. And if I differ in my views with other monks, it is not with the intention to put them down. As I said just now, we cannot blame them because they also have this sincere intention to teach the right Dhamma. But unfortunately, as I mentioned just now, they take certain books to be the correct Dhamma, when in fact they have contradictions with our 4 original Nikayas. And why they don't see this contradiction is because they study too much. They study so much, They study the 5 Nikayas, they study the Vinaya, they study the Abhidhamma, 7 books, they study the commentary, so many books, they study the sub-commentary, so many books, they study the sub-sub-commentary, so many books now that how are you going to... This is like they say, jack of all trades, master of none. These suttas are meant not to be read once, These 4 Nikayas are meant to be read again and again and again. And I mentioned before, each time you read, you something new is revealed to you. You read it again, you see it in more depth. So that the more times you read, the more you understand. And if you only read it once or twice, you're not going to catch many important points. So, 2 years ago, I went to KL and I gave a talk in one big Buddhist temple, and the chief monk there introduced me as a controversial monk. My intention is not to be controversial. It so happened that what I say is a bit different from other monks. So the subject is controversial. But I never, if you listen carefully to what I say and the books I publish, I might attack Dhamma, which I consider to be wrong. I never attack people. But because some people, their defilements, as I said just now, is a bit big. They get very angry, they say I attack them. There's nothing personal in this, Dhamma is not mine, Dhamma is not yours. Dhamma belongs to everybody. I don't claim that I speak the absolute truth. Maybe I'm correct, maybe I'm not correct. What I try to do is only to let you see the other side of the picture, for you to consider, and if you think it's logical, you want to accept, you accept. If you don't want to accept, don't accept. We are not trying to sell something, Dhamma cannot be sold. I'm not trying to change your belief. You can believe what you want to believe is good for you. What I'm trying to do is only to teach the Dhamma according to the Buddha's words and try to help some people. And the intention is, as I said, good, and not to put down anybody, but unfortunately some people, they get the wrong idea that I attack them, and they start to spread some bad things and about me and all this. I know what's, but I just try to ignore. Yeah. There's another thing that some people have this view about jhanas, that they say you can be easily attached to jhanic bliss, and you get sidetracked. Actually, in the suttas, the Buddha said that there are two kinds of happiness or pleasure. One type of pleasure is sensual pleasures, and the Buddha said that should not be indulged in. But there's another type of happiness, jhanic happiness, which the Buddha said should be pursued, developed, and made much of. This is mentioned in Digha Nikaya number 29, Majjhima Nikaya number 66 and 139. And then the Buddha gave the reason why. The Buddha said there are 4 advantages from pursuing, developing, and making much of jhanic bliss. And the 4 advantages are Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahant. In fact, if you look into the suttas, like in Samyutta Nikaya number 28, there's about 9 suttas where Arahant Sariputta, Ananda asked him, I see your face is very serene, very clear. In what state have you been abiding? And there's one sutta where Sariputta said, I've been abiding in the first jhana. Then another sutta, I said, I've been abiding in the second jhana. The one, third jhana, fourth jhana, fifth jhana, that means arupa jhana, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, until the 9th cessation. So you see the Arahants, they constantly, every day, they abide in jhanas. Buddha saw nothing wrong in that. In fact, in one of the suttas, Majjhima Nikaya number 36, the Buddha said, when he has to speak Dhamma to people, then he speaks. When he's not speaking Dhamma, then he'll enter jhanas. His mind becomes one-pointed. That means these Arahants, all the time, if they're not doing anything that has to be done concerning the outside world, all the time they abide in jhanas, So much so that the Buddha has stated in the Anguttara Nikaya, book of the Force, he said there are 4 types of postures, 4 types of sleeping position. He said there's a type where you sleep with your back on the floor. Most of us sleep like that way. But surprisingly, the Buddha said there is a ghost posture. Ghosts also sleep like that. And then the Buddha said there's a type of posture where you sleep resting on your left side. The Buddha said there's a luxurious posture. Then the Buddha said there's a third posture, you sleep on the right side, there's the lion posture, and he encouraged people to sleep on the right side. I think there's a reason for that. The reason is, this is my personal opinion, the reason is when we are active, We breathe in through two nostrils, We breathe, our breathing goes through two nostrils when we are very active. But when we are very calm, and our body is very calm and we breathe very slowly, surprisingly the right nostril stops to function, The right nostril stops to function and we breathe through the left nostril. So that if you sleep on your right hand side, your breathing in and out through your left nostril is unobstructed. Whereas if you sleep on your left side, our sinus tends to flow down, isn't it? So if you sleep on your left side, it will block your left nostril. And I think that's my personal opinion why the Buddha asks us to sleep on the right side. And then the Buddha said there is a posture called the Tathagata posture. And the Buddha said the Tathagata posture is not any position of the body. The Buddha said the Tathagata posture is resting in the first jhana, or the second jhana, or the third, or the fourth jhana. In other words, the Buddha never goes to sleep. And you can understand why. If you look into the sutta, the Buddha said, if you have not attained the jhanas, you must cultivate during the day, non-stop. In the morning, in the noon, and the evening. All the time you must cultivate to attain the jhanas. And even at night, the first watch, you must meditate, walk and sit and walk. And then the middle watch, you can take your rest. And then the last watch, you continue to sit and walk. So like a person like the Buddha, they have attained to jhanas, and their jhanas are very stable. So, and when the person's jhana is very stable, whenever he wants to, he inclines his mind to enter jhana. So because of that, he takes his rest in the jhanic state. So from this sutta where the Buddha talked about the Tathagata posture, it's quite obvious that the Buddha does not fall asleep like we do. There's no, actually sleep is due to this hindrance, Because of our hindrance, we feel sleepy, This is the third hindrance, sloth and torpor. So for most of us, say by 12 o'clock midnight, the hindrance, they press down on us so hard. Or you feel groggy already, so sleepy, tak boleh tahan. But in the case of the people who attain the jhanas and the Buddha's disciples, the Buddha asked them to cultivate until they are very strong. In fact, there's one sutta where the Buddha mentioned about 4 kinds of samadhi bhavana, development of concentration, 4 types, Then the Buddha talked about one type. He said there's one type of concentration which is conducive to jnana dasana, very conducive to insight, And what is that type of concentration? The Buddha said a person cultivates his mind until it's bright. And he cultivates it to brilliance. It's so bright that the Buddha says day becomes night and night becomes day. In other words, the mind becomes bright so that at night his mind is all the time bright like day. Mind is a very powerful thing, If we know how to cultivate it, it becomes a very, very powerful tool. People like the Buddha, without telescope, he could see 2,500 years ago. He called the galaxy, he called Chakrawala. Chakra means a disc, a flat disc. Now, 2,500 years ago, they observed the stars. They find the galaxy is flat, How come the Buddha could see? This, you have to study the suttas to come to a conclusion. And if you study the 4 Nikayas, you find that the teachings are consistent. There is no contradiction in the teachings, but there are some small mistakes here and there. What type of small mistakes? For example, the Buddha gave several types of simile. One of the types of simile is, for example, the Buddha, there's a sutta where the Buddha said, he took some sand on his fingernail, and then he spoke to his disciples. He said, you look at the sand on my fingernails and compare it with the sand in the world. Which one is more? Then they said, the sand on your fingernail is so little compared to the sand in the world. How can the sand on your fingernail compare with the sand of the world? So the Buddha said, in the same way, there's one sutta where the Buddha said, a person who has attained Sotapanna, stream entry, the dukkha that is remaining is so little, like the sand on the fingernail. Whereas a person who has not attained to Sotapanna, Puthujjana, an ordinary person, the dukkha that is remaining for him is so much like the sand in the world. This is logical. You can accept this. But sometimes they get confused with other simile. There's another simile where the Buddha said, if you look in India, he said, you look at the amount of land that is accessible, that is used by human beings, that can be used by human beings, town area, fields where they plant crops and all these things. When you compare it with the inaccessible areas, like the very high mountainous areas, the thick jungles that people cannot go, and the rivers, the wide rivers that people cannot afford go through and all that. The area that is usable compared with the area that is not usable is not so much, right? But in our mind, we can reasonably think maybe something like 20% or 30% of that land in India is used by people. The rest is not used. So the Buddha said, in the same way, the number of human beings now, after they pass away, the number of human beings that will come back to be humans or to be heavenly beings are so few like the land that is usable. Whereas the number of human beings that will go into the woeful plains will be so much like the land that is not usable. So if you think in terms of, say, 20 or 30, 20%, maybe about 20% of human beings can come back to be reborn as humans or as heavenly beings, it's reasonable. Then another 70% or 80% will go to the woeful plains, that's reasonable. But then sometimes these similes, they occur a few times and they confuse, And then there's for example, there might be a sutta where the Buddha, they give a simile where the Buddha take up the sand on his fingernails and compare with the earth. Then he said, the number of human beings that will be reborn as human beings or as devas so little, like the sand on the fingernails. Whereas those that will go into woeful plains, so many like the sands in the world. That type of comparison, I think not logical, isn't it? Okay, that means out of say like 1,000 people, maybe only one come back to the human plane or go to heaven. Too few, isn't it? So dear, you can understand this kind of inconsistencies come about because they pass from mouth to mouth reciting, then there's a slight confusion over the simile. And this type of inconsistency, we admit, are found in the Pali Suttas. But as far as the Dhamma is concerned, there is no inconsistency. Not like, for example, in certain, sad to say, certain Mahayana sutras, for example, like this Leng Yen Ching, Leng Yam King, this Surangama Sutra, where the Buddha is supposed to have talked about a Buddha nature. He talked about a Buddha nature which is permanent, eternally existing. And the reason for this given is that they say that consciousness, the stream of consciousness never ends. never ends. In fact, in our Pali Suttas, the Buddha did say that the stream, the consciousness, it only arises, each consciousness that arises it has got a basis, a reason for it to arise. It does not flow naturally. Every second, every moment of consciousness depends on some condition for it to arise. So that if you cultivate your mind, you can change your consciousness. For example, our thinking, to an ordinary person, he cannot stop the thinking, These conceptions, this thinking process, what the Buddha calls the proliferation of thoughts, multiplies very much. And this is thinking and conceptualizing all the time. This cannot stop, until you attain to jhana. Only when you attain to jhana, then your mind can be controlled and the thinking stops. And because the thinking stops, you are able to see things clearly, and you are able to get intuitive wisdom, not wisdom that comes from conceptualizing. As long as you have not attained vijnana, all your reasoning, all your wisdom is all conceptualized wisdom. It's a lower form of wisdom. So, unfortunately, in the Shurangama Sutra, they say that consciousness is a stream that never ends. This is has got a problem in terms of our sutta. And there are other kinds of inconsistency in the Mahayana Sutras, where you can find between two sutras, they contradict each other. That is possible. For example, in they call the Six Patriarch Sutra, Lok Châu King, Tan King, Lok Châu Tan King. There, the disciple of the fifth patriarch, what's his name? Sun Xiu, he wrote a few words. He said, clean your basic nature. Don't let the dust alight. Then after that, our sixth patriarch, Huy Neng, he wrote, there is no self-nature, so where can the dust alight? He is a person who understands Dhamma. He said there is no self-nature, there is no soul, there is no something that you can call I, something permanent. And so when you see that, like Churangama Sutra, they talk about this forcing, and this forcing to them is something permanent, eternal. So whether you call it forcing or not, when the moment you say is something eternal, something that will never be destroyed, straight away that is a soul already. That is a capital S self. So this kind of sutra, you find contradicts the Sixth Patriarch Sutra. So because of this, if you keep studying the Mahayana Sutras, sometimes you can get a bit confused. I met one man in Berlin. He said he studied a lot of the Mahayana Sutras for many years already because he can only study the Chinese books. Then he said he's so confused now. He said he doesn't understand. So the important thing is not to read too many books. You should only read those books that are reliable. In fact, now there is a group of monks in Taiwan who are teaching that they should go back to the Ahanjing. Yes, there's a group of monks, and now they are beginning to translate our Pali Suttas into Chinese. There's one monastery in Kaohsiung. They are translating the Pali Suttas into Chinese. Any other question? transfer merit to all living beings now. Think of all living beings and this merit of hearing the Dhamma, speaking the Dhamma, we transfer to all beings. Etavata, Cha'amhehi, Sambatang, Punya Sampadang, Sabbe Deva, Sabbe Satta, Sabbe Buddha, Anumodantu, Sabba Sampati, Siddhya, Sadhu, Sadhu.